I'm going to now pass it over to our Senior Project Advisor, Dr. Sarah Diamond. It's been an absolute pleasure working on this project with her, and here we are. Thank you, Sarah.
Great. Thanks so much, Annie, and likewise working with you. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Activating Aboriginal Territories in Cyberspace. Our session will run from, 1:42 p.m. to about 2:30. And I'll begin with a land acknowledgement and then introduce you to our wonderful speakers, Jason Lewis and Skawennati. And as Annie said, please place your questions in the chat throughout the presentation. I will curate from these, and if there are many questions, I will try to aggregate them. We meet today on a virtual platform, which offers an important moment for us to reground ourselves in physical space. I ask that you take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home and the First Peoples, Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit of your place. The First Ontario Performing Arts Centre is located in downtown St. Catharines, Ontario, on the shared traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, the Neutral Peoples, and many other Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We offer our sincere gratitude and respect to their historic and continued stewardship of this land. We reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We acknowledge Indigenous, Black, people of color, and 2 SLGBTQAI+ that have been marginalized for centuries and more, and our collective responsibility to take action for a better world, free of oppression, discrimination, and racism. And now for our presenters. Jason Edward Lewis is a digital media theorist, a poet, and software designer. He is the University Research Chair in Computational Media and the Indigenous Future Imaginary, as well as Professor of Computation Arts at Concordia University, Montreal. Born and raised in Northern California, Jason is Hawaiian and Samoan. He founded OBX Laboratory for Experimental Media, where he conducts research creation projects exploring computation as a creative and cultural material. And he directs the Initiative for Indigenous Futures and co-directs the Indigenous Futures Research Center, the Indigenous Protocol and AI workshops, the Aboriginal Territories in Cyberspace Research Network, and the Skins workshops on Aboriginal storytelling and video game design. Skawennati makes art that addresses history, the future, and change from her perspective as an urban Mohawk woman and as a cyberpunk avatar. Her early adoption of cyberspace as both a location and a medium for her practice has produced groundbreaking projects such as Cyber Powwow and Time Traveler. She is best known for her machinimas, movies made in virtual environments, but also produces still images, textiles, and sculpture. Her works have been presented in Europe, Oceania, China, and across North America, and she was recently honored to receive the 2019 Salt Spring National Art Prize Jurors' Choice Award and a 2020 Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship. Jason and Skawennati, over to you.
Gway, everybody. So first I'm going to start with sharing my screen. So let me do that. Okay, awesome. See that title page? All righty. Sego Sewo Guego. I want to first say nyawa to Sarah Diamond, Dr. Sarah Diamond, our old friend, and very happy that you've invited us. Very nice to be in conversation with you. I have been to St. Catharines and I've been to the Niagara, to the, oh, now I'm going to forget your name as though I haven't been there. But anyway, I have visited you and I was welcomed so wonderfully, and I like that place very much. So I'm very happy to be invited. So today, did I say everything I need to say? I think so. We're going to tell you what we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we told you. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about moi. And you heard a lot of it already. So this is really it in pictures right now. But actually, the first about me personally, I am Mohawk of Kahnawake. And so, oh, look, I have a spelling mistake. Everybody look at the spelling mistake I put in Ganyangehaga. But the way I like to share this with people because a lot of people don't know this, that this is how Iroquois or Haudenosaunee society is configured. And I think it's a nice little, very quick bit of information that you need. So the Haudenosaunee are the Iroquois, and we are one of 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy or the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And the Mohawk, yeah, I'm doing this upside down a little bit. The Mohawk people, the Mohawk Nation have about 9 communities there's 9 communities of us, and my community, or old terminology, band, is Kahnawake. And then each community is broken down into clans, and my community has 3 clans, and I'm the Turtle Clan. This is my new list of what I do. I thought I'd try it out on you. Tangible and intangible objects, moving and still images, costume and fashion, and storytelling. And here are a few images of what I've done. Oh no, actually, I'm going to start off with a machinima, because a lot of people don't know what that is. And just by showing you one, I think you'll get it right away. I hope so. And if not, you can ask me questions later. So this will take 2 minutes, and it's a movie trailer, so it should explain to you exactly what it is in those 2 minutes.
My name is Yodet Sa'a, and I live on Earth, usually. Until recently, life on Earth has been very good. The goal of our mission is to create a union. I have been invited on this historic voyage because I have a special power. I'm a dreamer. Oh, perfectly. Wish us luck.
Okay, the end is a little long, so I'm gonna just cut it off.
My name.
Oh, I always do that. I guess I just wanted to show you a few slides about of my work, and I wanted to let you know that the Peacemaker Returns, the video or machinima that you just saw, is part of an installation that was commissioned by Vox Centre de l'Image Contemporain, and the installation is called Diasquana Stachsun Terha, or We Extend the Rafters, and it includes this gorgeous, if I do say so myself, longhouse of the future and 5 wampum belts of the future. I won't show you all of them today. I also made a few other machinimas. One's called Time Traveler. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing it in another order. This is something I did in 2015, Dance with Myself, Photograph, and a machinima graph. Another machinima, and I just wanted to show you, the sculpture that I made, which was a public art sculpture that came from the emblem that we designed for that machinima. Words Before All Else Part 1 is a series of machinimas that I'm working on right now, and then I make these machinima graphs, these still images that come from the same sets that I make. They're kind of like, they are production stills actually. And then I made this project here, Calico and Camouflage. I guess I forgot to tell you that the main thing I'm interested in, well, I guess it's all in the bio, right? But, I really have been trying to envision Indigenous people in the future. That's what I've been doing for almost 20 years now. and it's really fun. That's why I keep doing it. And I think it's also important. I think it's important that we have some, that we just see who we could be and who we want to be in the future. I think we've been shown in the past a lot, and we have an awesome past. Some parts not so great maybe, but there's a lot of great stuff to be proud of. But I also think it's important that we see who we want to be, and that we can have those discussions together. And I also think there's a lot that we can offer the greater society. Calico and Camouflage is a little closer. It's a little more in the present, actually, and it's a set of outfits. It's a fashion line of resistance wear. And originally, it was just going to be for my avatars. I just thought I'd have a fashion show, you know, in my virtual world that I love. But things happen, right? Things change, and so this wonderful curator Marie Perrault said, "Oh, Art Souterrain needs like art, you know, in this whole mall. Like, why don't we think about how we could get the avatars into this mall?" And so that's what happened here. This show was closed down by the pandemic. Actually, it's opened on like February 22nd, 2020. And then I also made the outfits in real life, and so I was so that's very exciting for me, and it's a new possible direction that's kind of out of the digital, even though I know that this whole thing is all about digital. And that's me in a very little nutshell. Now I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Jason Lewis.
You got 2 more.
Oh, I have 2 more slides. Oops. Yes. Greetings from Skyworld just came out. It's the art museum at the University of Toronto. You can see it on their website. Here's a cool machinimograph from it.
Okay, great. So there's me in advance. So these are some of the basic facts. So I'm Hawaiian and Samoan. I was born and raised in Northern California, and studied a combination of philosophy and computer science as an undergrad, and then did interactive design and art, and then spent 10 years in Silicon Valley research labs working on digital media technology research. And I came and I joined Concordia in 2002. Oh, means I've been there 18 years, going on 19 years. There I'm the University Research Chair in Computational Media and the Indigenous Future Imaginary, and that's sort of as research chair has helped support the work that you've seen today and some of the other stuff that Skawennati and I work on. And then just last year, I co-founded the Indigenous Futures Research Center at Concordia. So I realize I'm missing. There should be a final line on this slide. I don't know what happened to it. The way I think about my practice, kind of across everything I do, so the art making, the critical writing, and the technology making, is I'm interested in computation as a creative and cultural material. So how do we think about computation as something that we work with in order to express ourselves creatively, but also to express ourselves from particular cultural perspectives. Next. So just like Skawennati, I'm just going to breeze through some projects. So I did a series of projects in the 2000s called Public Lettering that was looking at how to create sort of large-scale conversations in public spaces. So this is before Twitter. This is actually a project. This was part of a larger project that Sarah was the leader of, and where we're investigating mobile technology and art in general. And so this is a project where you sort of use your phone to send text to these large-scale screens that you were starting to find in urban city centers. And go to the next one. And then we sort of went the other direction with Citywide, which is thinking about, well, what does it mean to create a chat space that sort of only operates in a very local area? So if you're at a particular cafe or a particular bar or something like that. And then the next one is Passage Oublié, where we did an installation at Pearson's International Airport about extraordinary renditions during the War on Terror, where people could use their cell phones to sort of like make commentary on what we were talking about in this touchscreen display. So these are all sort of really kind of early experiments in thinking through how do you get people to engage in these large scale conversations, which we now do all the time. So next, so I'm going to talk about this poem project. You can go to the next slide and just hit play. Yeah, and it'll just play while I'm talking. So my core artistic interest is in poetry and sort of digital text, as that has kind of become more and more possible. So what you see here is an exhibition that was of a series called Poetry for Excitable Mobile Media, where I was experimenting with different ways that we might interact with text, both in sort of large scale displays, which you'll see in a minute, and then also on mobile devices, which is what we're looking at right now. So 4 of the pieces were displayed as mobile with a projection, and 4 on large scale displays. And the main interest is thinking through, like, what does it mean to use interactivity and dynamics and computation and network access in the same way that poets have always used rhythm and rhyme, alliteration, and those sorts of tools in order to support and sort of augment the meaning of the words that they're writing. And go to the next one. So I'm also a technology developer. So all the work that I just showed you actually flowed from a library that we developed called NextText for doing sort of interesting things with text that we couldn't do with existing technology. And so that's been sort of core to my art practice. Most of the time is using the art practice to push forward what's possible with the technology. And usually whatever it is I want to do, there doesn't quite exist the tools necessary to do it, at least the way I want to do it. And so I work with my team to develop the technologies that are necessary. And then we also write, if you go to the next one, we also create applications. Go to the one after that. So this is Mr. Softy, which is one of the text editors that we've created that allows you to compose text in the same way that you would compose text, say, in Microsoft Word. But in addition to be able to change the size and the font and the color and things like that, you can add behaviors that allow you to manipulate the letter forms themselves. And you can do that on individual letters or on words or paragraphs or whatever it might be. And then I did a whole series of artworks based upon that. And yeah, that's me.
I should let you know that we're in the same room, Jason and I. We're sitting right across, so I'm like looking at him sometimes like this. And yeah, we're in a bubble. We're married. Okay, so the main event is that we believe you're all here to hear about is a case study of this project called the Skins Workshops. The Skins Workshops, this is what Sarah asked us to talk about. And actually, once again, we're just going to start with a video because we think it encapsulates it really well. And hopefully that's true. And if not, we're going to be talking about it for the rest of the time. So it's a cute video. Now that comes the advertising part. All right, so we've been doing this project for years and years, and we have so much to tell you. So we hope we're telling you the things you want to know. We're just going to tell you stuff. And
So that video, even though that's for one of our later workshops, sort of does a really good job of kind of pulling together all the different parts that we try to bring into the workshops that we do. And so the three big parts are the storytelling component. So working with Indigenous communities to bring in storytellers, elders. We have the participants themselves bring in stories that they know from the culture. And we talk about why the stories are important, what makes a good story, what the work is that they're trying to do. And then we use that to start a conversation with them about what kind of game they want to make. So what kind of story they want their game to tell. And then we also start instructing them on how to design a game. So all the different components, the storyboarding, the concept art, the scripts, all those components, we give them instruction on that, how to make those things happen. And then we start with technical instruction with them. And we teach them all the parts you need to know in order to make a video game. So 3D animation, modeling and animation, programming, artwork, cutscenes, all those sorts of things that need to come together in order to make a video game. And for these big video game workshops that you saw, we do these in 3 weeks. But as we will talk about a bit later, we now have sort of a number of different kinds of workshops that deal with other things other than video games and also are configured differently.
So how did it all start anyway? I guess we got a grant. So Jason had just started not too long before, a couple of years maybe, at Concordia University, and of course, when you're a university professor, you have access now to different grants than just, wonderful, that other than the Canada Council or your regional or local or provincial arts funding agency. So there was this pilot project grant from SSHRC, right? From Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. That was called, I think it was even Aboriginal at that time, Aboriginal Research Networks. Yeah. And what was very interesting about that was that they recognized the fact that there weren't a lot of Indigenous people in academia yet. And so you didn't have to be a professor to be named on the grant, as it were, or even, I think was I even a co-investigator,
Yes.
Jason? Yeah. So I had this, it's quite hierarchical, and they have these names all mean something very specific within the SSHRC grant. And so it was very different that someone like myself, who is, like I just said, is not a professor, is mainly an artist, was able to be that. And I think it's important to mention.
It's very important to mention because it meant that it recognized the intellectual labor, that's done by our partners coming from the Indigenous community, which SSHRC had been notoriously bad about, and has actually recently kind of backslid on. So
Jason and I had already been working together in a project that we think is the ancestor to Aboriginal territories in space, which is called Cyber Powwow. That itself can have an hour of talking, but it's another great big multi-year project. But the point is that we were thinking already about how we could keep working we thought that it was very important that there be Aboriginal territories in cyberspace. We wanted to make sure Indigenous people were present in this new environment. We wanted to not just be present, but we wanted to be affecting its look and feel. We wanted to be making websites. We wanted to be just participating. And so this grant allowed us to invite a bunch of people to be in our network. And so we did invite a bunch of people to have a party, no, just joking, and to have an important meeting, a serious meeting in which we did a lot of talking, of course. But the main words that I want you to know that happened that affected, that had a major effect is one woman. Her name is Louise Profil Leblanc, herself a storyteller and an arts administrator. She said, well, the way you've got to do this is you've got to meet the young, you've got to teach the young people, and you got to meet them where they're at, meaning you got to go with something that's exciting to them. And you know what my grandson is doing? Playing video games. So you got to teach them how to make video games. And we were like, oh, we don't do video games. But we were like, you're probably right. So that's what we started to do. And I don't have my notes here. That was the one. That's the downside of being able to see all the people and see our presentation. Yeah.
Well, so we actually had a follow-on meeting after that, where we brought most of the group back together to kind of go deeper on some of the things we talked about, including this idea of doing video game workshops. And so we actually ran like a test video game workshops with the people who came to the group. And of course, we did that by inviting some people who really knew how to make video games. So Celia Pierce, Beth LaPonce, a couple other people who could teach us as well as teach the other people how you might go about making a video game. And that went really well. And so we're like, okay, you know, let's, this does seem like maybe a good way to go about increasing Indigenous presence in cyberspace. And then we spent 2 years, we spent 2 years trying to find a partner in Ganawage in particular to work with us. And we found Oizogo Lahash, who was sitting next to me there in that picture, who was a teacher at the time in the high school, was an arts teacher, arts and cultures teacher. And she got really excited when we started talking to her about it. And she thought that it made complete sense to her that we try to do something like this. So she's
my cousin.
And she's Skawennati's cousin.
It's important to say because it could be a much longer story, and I'm really noticing the time here. But it's important to say that it was a personal and even familial relationship that finally unlocked getting us I think into the community, even because, yes, long story. We can talk about it more, but anyway, I wanted to mention that one.
So we designed a workshop with her where we went to her class. We brought our team. So our team was us and then research assistants, primarily from my department, Design and Computation Arts at Concordia. I'm lucky enough to work in a department where we have a full range from artists to designers to programmers in the student body. And so we would take our team there every 10th day.
They had
every week and a half or every 2 weeks.
Or a 9-day schedule.
It was very confusing and such a pain. But anyways, terrible. It wasn't every week and it wasn't every other week, you know, it was somewhere in between. Anyways, we would go for 2 hours. And then once a month, we would do a full day with them on one of their PED days. And, you know, it was a really amazing experience because, you know, we were just kind of figuring our way through things as well and trying to figure out how to pull these things together. But, you know, finding, for instance, we started out with the storytelling stuff right from the beginning because we thought this is the best way to ground the work that we were asking the students to do. So it's important to note that one of the things that came up in our preparatory meetings when we had that big group of people, like 30 people sort of around the table, and frankly, the minority of us were Indigenous, right? Most of the people were non-Indigenous, but very interested in the goals of the project. And one of the core debates that we had was, you know, so some of the people who were coming from the game space, part of the work that they do in the game space is to sort of like push back against the sort of the misogyny and the racism and the kind of various other kind of toxic things that that often sort of happen within the game space. And so they were concerned, they were expressing some current concerns like, so what if they wanted to create Grand Theft Res, right? So what if they wanted to create like a really violent kind of misogynistic game based on the games they're playing, but sort of base it in Ganawage? What do we do then? And we went back and forth and talked it through lots of times up and down. And at the end of the day, we were like, look, we can't come into in a relationship with them telling them that we want to come here and help empower you to express yourself. And then in the next breath say, but you can't express yourself in these different ways, right? And that if we did run into something complicated or problematic, that we would just have to discuss it as a group and figure it out. So, so that's what we did going into this very first workshop. And we had to take a long break. I think in February and maybe March or something like that, our team had to take a break. But we've done like the storytelling, we've done like, this is how you design a game. We've done some of the technical instruction. And so we're like, look, we can't be back for about 6 weeks. When we come back, you need to have designed your game. You guys need to design that, right? And when we went away, we were like, we're not sure what's gonna happen. Like, are they gonna make a game? Like, are they gonna fight? Are they gonna come up with a single vision? Whatever it is. We came back 6 weeks later, and we came into the classroom, and it had like 4 big classroom tables all pushed together, great big thing of butcher paper on top of it, and they had drawn out an entire world, right? Where different spots in that world hooked into the different parts of stories that they had been telling over the fall. And it was amazing. It was one of the best experiences in my teaching life. And we were like, okay, like, we were like, oh my God, can they make a game? And they're like, of course we can make a game. This is what we live and breathe. And so, and so then we helped them make the game. And that really kind of set the basic template. But
yeah, well, one of the problems with, as we've already alluded to, is like 200 hours, right, of instruction to make a video game. And in this particular case, we were taking team members, like, these students who they're all undergrads, the Concordia students who are all also undergrads, the research assistants, luckily we had a family van. So we would like pile them into the van and drive there on all these weird days. They're university students, so they've got their own schedules going on. So like some days one person couldn't come. We used to have the schedule was killing us basically.
We have 2 small kids.
Yeah, our children were small at the time. So we decided that we needed to do the next one needed to be done differently. And what we decided to do, and Concordia gave us some money, but asked that it would be done on the premises of Concordia. I wanted to mention here that some people, well, anyway, that might sound like not great, but I thought it was fantastic to be able to invite Indigenous students into the university. I felt like I know that a lot of kids didn't have parents who went to university, and they never set foot inside a university. They thought it was a scary place to go. And for them to have a place that was inviting them in and to go to each time was, I thought, really great. I don't think everyone is supposed to go to university, not all people, period, not all Indigenous people. But those people, at least if they're not going, it's not because they're afraid or don't feel like they can walk inside the building.
And important, just a quick note, that when we brought this to our partner, the Kahnawake Education Center, our partner in Kahnawake, we were a little bit nervous about how they might feel about it, but they were super enthusiastic and supportive of it. And for exactly the reasons that Skawennati just said, is they were like, it's so hard to get our kids just even think about university, much less go into a university building. And if you're going to have them be there for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that's awesome.
So we did have them here for 14 days nonstop.
Something really stupid.
Nonstop. We were all going to die at the end of the 14 days. So yeah, that's all I think we'll say about this one, about Adventures of Skawennati, Legend of the Stone Giants. And so that was Skins 2. And then we said, okay, let's do this one more time, but let's try it another way. And then we did like these sort of 2 intense sections of maybe 5 days or 4 days or something weird. And then with
a couple months in between.
And then some time in between in which they were just maybe contacting us by email and stuff. That worked out okay, but it was still
the scheduling was hard to keep everybody committed over those time periods.
So then what we started to think, so there's things that are chronologically, they're 2 in order. Like there's so many ways to show this information that right now the next slide is not what happened next. What happened next is we're like, let's chunkify. Let's figure out how we can offer shorter workshops. Okay. And so, I will, what? You want me to not do what you talk about this then, and I'll
okay.
They can save it.
No, I was going to say this is not a shorter one. This is a 3-week intensive.
Yeah.
This is where
we figured out.
Yeah, this is when we figured out the model that we use now for the big video game workshops, which is 3-week intensive. Take the weekends off so everybody doesn't die. but it sort of keeps everybody focused. It's easier to keep the team together. And it seems to be just enough time to actually do what we want to get done without killing everybody in the process.
And actually have a finished game.
And have a finished game.
I think it's important. I mean, how are we doing for time, Miss Moderator?
We're not, we've got 13 minutes.
We've got 13 minutes for questions. Okay, I think I won't tell you the story then.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go just to talk about that. We did machinima workshops because 13 minutes of our talk, or including questions?
Total.
Okay, so we were very fast. We did machinima workshops. Now you know what a machinima is, right? We made beautiful youth made beautiful machinimas, in my opinion. These can all be seen on our website for the most part, which is going to come at the end, Jason.
Yeah, and I think also, I think it's important, I mean, maybe we'll talk about this later, right? Is that we also started working with other communities. So those first 4 skins workshops were all with Ganawage. And then the next 2 big skins workshops, which we took a break from 2013 to 2017, we did 2 in Hawaii. But then in between, we also started doing a bunch of different workshops with different communities, which we'll talk about now. And so that was a big jump for us too, was to move out of, you know, our lovely, really comfortable bubble with Ganawage, and sort of think about how to work with other communities. So so one of the other workshops we developed during this time was on creative computation. So this was a semester-long class that I did in Ganawage at the high school, teaching the students in Oizogo's art class, or sorry, she supervised it, but students who are interested in how to program for creative practice.
And how it's going? Well, we got this bigger, you talk about it.
So we got another grant, a SSHRC partnership grant in 2014-15 for what's called the Initiative for Indigenous Futures, which is a series of projects looking at how Indigenous people, how we're imagining and creating our futures. And that sort of like kind of started a new generation of thinking about the skins workshops. So I think you can go ahead and.
Yeah. And so we realized that part, you know, in our chunkification, we're like, oh, we're always doing character design. So why don't we have a workshop on character design? That could probably be 2 hours long. We also developed one. We realized one of our partners was way up north, had terrible bandwidth, and they're like, can you do it with paper and pencil? And we're like, as a matter of fact, we can. And so this is this is a poster for one of the 7th Gen character design workshops that we've been giving all over the place for a while, and are now giving online at the moment. COVID era, we've migrated a bunch of this stuff online. This whole series of posters are online workshops we did with Imaginative. And so here, intro to avatar design, right? Game design with Bitsy, and then interactive storytelling with Twine. We also made, I'm gonna go super fast, but we found ways to make that 7th Gen character design workshop go longer if people want it. So basically did a longer one and ended up with these cute little 3D printouts of the things they design. Take portraits of your avatar. Oh, we did a hacking workshop with Jane Tingley. Imagining Indigenous World Unity, which is a game engine. Same. Oh, let's just skip talking about this, should we? No?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing. Part of the reason why we started looking for different models is that the video game workshops are really expensive and they're super time intensive. They locked up our entire lab for about 4 months every year. And we couldn't get anything else done. So we were like, okay, let's figure out how we can make them so they're smaller, they're much less expensive, etc. And then when the pandemic came, we like everybody else, started figuring out how to do them online, right? So a number of the workshops that you just saw the posters for, those are actually being done online. And so that's been a big transition for us as well. But frankly, not as painful as I think we thought it might be. So yeah, just want to comment that, and just want to skip this. I'm sorry, you just want to talk about this.
I just want to tell you that we have you know what? If there's time, there's no questions, I'll tell you about this. So how about that? We're done. Conclusion. Oh, you have the notes. You've got the notes. You know what? I think you get it. We're not going to tell you what we told you because we told you.
Oh, we have an associate director. So we got money from my university to hire an associate director for the skins workshops. And that's been really, really super key for keeping them going, because it was just becoming too much for Skawennati and I, given all the other things that we were doing. So this is a full-time person whose job is to make to do everything, produce them, not teach. We still have lots of research assistants who help with the teaching. Yeah, I think we can leave it there and take some questions.
Okay, well, thank you, you two. That was absolutely wonderful. Yohan, mahalo, merci, thank you. Brilliant. And we have some great questions lined up for you. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is, thank you both for sharing with us, Skawennati. Your machinima imagery of Indigenous futures reminds me, this is from Gavin Farron, of Nade Okaforo's African futurisms as distinct from Afrofuturism. What responses to your future imageries, if any, are you receiving from communities that are specifically rooted in traditional Indigenous identities?
I don't know. Let me think for a second. What responses am I getting? Let me tell you, I'll tell you two tiny little stories, and I hope that this is what I'm happy about. One time, me and Jason, we were traveling through Indian country, Iroquois country, in fact, and we were sitting in a restaurant. We were not alone. We were traveling with a large group of people, and we were just getting to know each other. So this one woman, basically we were showing my video, Time Traveler TM, on this tiny little phone, just like this, leaning down into the table. And so that there was a young woman sitting further down on the table, and she saw it. And I'm going to tell you that this person was like kind of shaped like Jason. He's like brown, big. And she came over to me and she said, "Did you make it?" And I was a little, I'm going to tell you, truly intimidated, just a tiny bit, okay? Because I was like, uh-oh, she's seen it and she hates something in it, you know? And so I said, yes, I did. And she goes, "Oh my God," me. And she just was so happy about it. She said she saw it in school, and she was just so happy to see Native people in the future. So that's one person. You know, the community has not issued me a statement or anything, but I've been having some pretty positive responses. You know, I think perhaps the people who feel negatively don't, you know, tell me, which I'm happy about, I'm fine with. You know, the people who, in Time Traveler TM, for example, there have been a number of people who've done the voices, you know, and they're almost all from my community, Kahanawake, and they're like, first of all, I think the fact that they even participate is like a plus sign. Like, I mean, like they support it. I don't think they would participate if they hated it. And yeah, and they're just like, "Oh, that's so good. I'm glad you have them say that. Oh, how about if I say this instead? I think it would be better." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. It is better. Like, yeah, say that." So that's just a tiny, I feel pretty okay with how they're responding to the images of us in the future.
Great, thank you. Here's another question. This is from Samantha Lynn Brennan. Anis, Skawennati, and Jason, you mentioned the challenge of making sure creation stayed appropriate while working with Indigenous youth. I'm just wondering if there are any other notable challenges you'd face that you feel like sharing with the audience.
Oh my goodness, yeah, so many.
So many.
Well, you know, so we alluded to the fact that you know, it took a while for us to find a partner in Kahanawake, and it was surprising to me because Skawennati's from that community. You know, I'm Native too, and
I'm not just from there. I'm you know, I have a connection.
Yeah, she's got deep family connections there. You know, but people were very skeptical. They were skeptical about video games. So remember, this is 2006 to 2008. So they're very skeptical about video games. Most of them, all that they understood about video games is that it was like basically sucking up all their kids and grandkids' time, and they couldn't get them to go outside. And you know, a lot of what they saw was really violent, you know, and so they're very wary about this idea that maybe some of their stories would be told through this medium. And so we talked to a number of different people. We thought we had a deal at some point, and then that fell through. And anyways, and then we ended up, you know,
Again and again.
Yeah, again and again. We ended up talking to Oizogo. who I don't, she's a very well-respected member of the community. And, she got it right away. I think partially because she's an educator and she's an artist. And so she's always been interested in innovation. But she really was like, we can totally use this to tell some of our stories. So let's do it. So that was an interesting challenge, that was time-based. I mean, I think that, there were lots of little challenges, but I don't know if we had any other like really big challenges where we were like, oh God, like, I don't know if this is going to work, or, this might all fall apart. We had, staffing's always a challenge, usually getting the students engaged has not been a problem with the various kind of workshops that we've offered. So that's been really great. I think it's because, Louise Profil-LeBlanc was correct, right? She was, we try to meet them where they're at and what they're interested in, even though that's actually not our practice, is not video games, though machinima is Skawennati's practice.
It became mine.
Became her practice, yeah, through this. So, yeah.
Thanks. No, it's okay. I've got another question. We just had a little bit of audio challenges on my part. So, and I apologize for that. So a really great question here. How do you guide script writing for students in the game creation? And what principles do you work with? And that may follow a little bit on, some of the dialogue around trying to look at Indigenous story structure. I think it's an interesting question. They've all been great, but here's another one.
So are we sharing the screen or not?
We unshared your screen, so we could see that you could see the participants.
That's great. I just wasn't sure. So the script writing was, so I think what we realized what we were doing is, all right, so long answer, hard to answer. First, I guess I want to say that we had a storytelling evening at the beginning. And so I thought, and that was really, so yeah, anyway, we had these stories. Sorry about this. It's like so hard to make it all succinct in just the time we have.
You're a lovely woman.
Of the workshop would bring stories, and we would first of all decide which one we want to choose. Okay, and the way we would decide upon it would be like, okay, how can we visualize this? So we would sit and talk about, like, for example, there was one story one time about someone rowing, a canoe, or even it might have been a kayak through a river, and things speeding up and slowing down while we said, can you visualize this? And sort of was like, yes. And so that was a part that they had wanted to put into the game. Excuse me. Another thing I want to say about this, though, is, at the beginning when we were doing this, we really, I think it's true to say both you and I really thought that, the whole point was to get these older stories, these, really traditional stories, and sort of bring them to life through game and through, this medium. And over the course of these years, I started to think like, God, I feel like we're sending the wrong message to the youth. I mean, it's a great message, but it's the same thing as I talked about kind of in the beginning of this presentation, like, yes, there's great things in our past and important things that we know from our past, but like, what about the experiences of these people living right now, or their parents or their grandparents? I think these are very, we're just as Indigenous as our ancestors. So like, I think it's really important that we talk about who we are now. And then slowly I was like, I think it's also kind of important to talk about ourselves in the future. And so you can also see in the trajectory of the games, of each game workshop, the large game workshop, how the stories we told have affected the stories that the participants of the game workshops told. So this is not exactly about script writing, but it is. There's one more thing I want to say, unless we have to shut this off right now, because it's 2:30.
We'll take 2 more minutes.
I just wanted to say that, the participants, which were largely kids, I keep trying to not say kids, but the participants would like write parts out, but actually what would happen is I would like clean it all up and turn it all into, for the first couple of workshops. And I realized that was like not sustainable and not good. Like it had to be, it had to be one of the participants. And so when we got to Hawaii, there was like, that was when I made the final, I finally realized it, like how I was too in control, if you will, or too taking it on. With the Hawaii one, there was many more participants, like there were 15 of them, and they were also older actually, and they were so gung-ho, and they were like, I think they were thinking, why is this Mohawk chick writing our story? You know, we want to write it, we have the skills, we can do it. And I was like, hey, I think you guys should write the story. And they're like, so that's, yeah, but it's really hard. I think, you know, figuring out the method is really hard. One more thing to say is all the lessons that we have created are online and or available to you. So if you're interested in seeing how we did it, we can share that with you.
Yeah, and also the videos we showed are all online too.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. That is an incredible gift. So can't thank you enough, Jason and Skawennati. We've had lovely, lovely kudos to you in the chat. People just jumping up and down with joy, hearing you speak about your work, and it's really visionary, important work. So thank you everybody for joining us. A big round of applause, please, to Jason and Skawennati. I'm going to put my clap up there. Please join us again. There's future events rolling out this weekend next. So take good care, everybody. Play safe, stay healthy, and keep learning.
Nyawa. Please
Mahalo.
can you save this again for us? First Ontario,
Yeah.
please? Great.
Yep. It's all recorded. And I'll save the chat.
Okay.
Yes, chat will be saved. Thank you again, friends. Take good
Thank
care.
Bye, Nina. Hi, Nina.